At a work session to discuss board budget priorities, and no action was taken. This is a special meeting of the Board of Education because at an earlier meeting we had, this meeting was originally scheduled to be on November 14th, but due to a conference that some board members and the acting superintendent need to be at, the board voted to change the date, and that was I don't know, probably at least 6 weeks, if not more ago, to change this board from November 14th meeting date to November 7th. In doing so, that made this a special meeting. Because it's listed as a special meeting, Kentucky state law dictates that things within this meeting have to flow in a certain way, meaning that, first of all, the agenda is set and no items on the agenda can be changed by state law. So no new items can be added to the agenda, no items can be taken away. Well, items can be taken away, but they can't be added because they have to be discussed and has to give adequate notice to the public. So as a special meeting, the agenda is set, just to let some folks know. I know there's concern out there about that, and that's the way it's listed according to state law. So with that in mind, we'll start off with our traditional moment of silence. Thank you. If you would, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Tonight, our vision statement will be read by Dr. Chris Kolb, board member from the 2nd District. Dr. Kolb.
All Jefferson County Public School students graduate prepared, empowered, and inspired to reach their full potential and contribute as thoughtful, responsible citizens of our diverse, shared world.
Thank you. At this time, as we'll go on to our next agenda item, which is the recognitions and resolutions. I would ask Ms. Terry Robinson to come forward to present those items. Ms. Robinson.
Dr. Polio, Board Chair Chris Brady, and members of the Jefferson County Board of Education. This evening, we began with the recognition of Chris Applegate, teacher at DuPont Manual High School, for his heroic act of saving the life of Dagan Kinderman. In October, Ms. Kathy Combs was sitting in her car with her 10-year-old son at DuPont Manual High School waiting for her daughter to finish practice for the school's annual Powder Puff football game when her son went into a full-blown seizure. While Ms. Combs panicked and tried to pull Dagan out of the car, Chris came running to their side. He cared for my son in that moment when I could not, she said. He helped get my son out of the car, put him in a recovery position, took his pulse, and was monitoring his breathing. Ms. Combs said throughout all of this, Chris was so kind, caring, and cool under pressure. I feel so fortunate that he was there. Dr. Polio, board member Diane Porter, and Assistant Superintendent Brad Weston, please come forward to thank Chris. Joining in the recognition is Assistant Principal Craig Klingerfuss, parent Ms. Kathy Combs, and her son Dagan. If you will please come forward. Next, we have the privilege of honoring Madeline Griffith, teacher at Eisenhower Elementary School, as the 2017 Kentucky World Language Association Outstanding National Network for Early Language Learning Teacher Award recipient. The award recognizes a world language teacher who has demonstrated long-term achievement and significant contributions in service to the profession. Dr. Polio, board member Benjamin Gees, and Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Glenn Beatty. Please come forward and congratulate Madeline. Joining in the recognition is Principal Julie Cummings. In celebration of National School Psychology Awareness Week, we have the honor of recognizing JCPS school psychologists Dr. Katie Matthews and Lorraine McMullen-Lee. They are Kentucky Association for Psychology in the Schools Award recipients. This year's theme, Power Up, Be a Positive Charge, represents the very essence of the work provided by 40 JCPS school psychologists who are highly trained professionals and who provide high-quality services to students, staff, and families. Dr. Matthews was presented with the Best Practice Award in recognition of her ability to embrace the challenges and opportunities of her role as a school psychologist and for the outstanding services she provides to students and their families. Ms. McMullen-Lee was presented with the Kentucky Regional Award, recognizing her for her many professional achievements and contributions to her profession. Dr. Poli, Board Chair Chris Brady, and Assistant Superintendent Dr. Alicia Everett, please congratulate Dr. Matthews and Ms. McMullen-Lee. Joining in the recognition is lead psychologist Dr. Joe Bargione. Their families and colleagues are here with us tonight to help celebrate them. Would you please stand from your seats to be recognized? We have the distinguished honor of recognizing and thanking two community partners for their outstanding contribution to our students and their families. The Jefferson County Public School District recognizes and celebrates 35 years of successful collaboration with Norton Children's Prevention and Wellness for its dedication to improving the health, safety, and well-being of children and families in our community. The partnership reaches approximately 15,000 JCPS students, family, and staff yearly through educational outreach programs such as Safety City and Children's Hospital Week, and sponsorships for classrooms to enhance learning. The district also extends its deep appreciation to Dr. William and Sally Dillon, co-founders of the Start the Heart Foundation, for the priceless gift it gives to our high school students to receive hands-on CPR training. The training program is implemented in the graduation required health class in all JCPS high schools. In the summer of 2016, Kentucky passed a law that requires all high school students to take hands-only CPR. The foundation's class follows the guidelines required by the state. Due to exclusively to the foundation, JCPS was able to comply with this new law and to successfully implement this amazing program. It is highly acclaimed and appreciated by the health teachers. Dr. Poli, Board Chair Chris Brady, and Assistant Superintendent Dr. Felicia Cummings-Smith, please congratulate Norton Children's Prevention and Wellness representatives, Janita Lyons, Nikki Boyd, Erica James, Sharon Ringers, and Tracy Morrison, and Start the Heart Foundation co-founders, Dr. William and Sally Dillon. Joining in the recognition is JCPS Practical Living Specialist Donna Benton. Finally, we are so proud and deeply honored to recognize one of our distinguished board members, Diane Porter, for being named as a 2017 Urban Educator of the Year finalist. Board member Diane Porter was one of 11 Urban Educator of the Year finalists selected for the nation's top award in urban education leadership. Dr. Polio, Board Chair Chris Brady, and board members, please come forward to congratulate Ms. Porter for her outstanding achievement. Dr. Polio and members of the Jefferson County Board of Education, this concludes our recognitions for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. And again, congratulations to all those that we've honored here this evening, and especially to our colleague, Ms. Porter. Is there a vote to receive the recognitions? Motion made to receive the recognitions made by Member Porter. Is there a second? Second made by Vice Chair Wilner. All those in favor? Motion passes. At this time is traditionally our time that we will dismiss everyone. So if there were any students, which I'm not sure if we had this time around, they would normally have a chance to go home and do homework. So everyone else, we appreciate everything that you've done again, and we'll break here for about a couple minutes to clear out the room. And those of you who might be standing, hopefully you'll have an opportunity to come down and grab a seat. So thank you. You got about one. All right. Ready? All right. So we're going to come back to order now. The next item on our agenda is a recommendation for approval of the meeting agenda. Again, due to the nature of this being a special meeting, there will be no changes allowed for those due to state
Chair
law.
Brady, point of order. Board Policy 01.44 about special called meetings states under the heading Exception, requirements for notice, delivery, and timing are not required in case of an emergency, which prevents compliance. If emergency conditions exist, such that injury or damage to personal property or financial loss to the board is likely, less than 24 hours notice may be given. That's the end of the policy. So this policy suggests that there are 3 reasons we can amend the agenda under an emergency: injury, damage to personal property, or financial loss to the board. Given the video evidence from 5 different school cameras of the horrific incident at J-Town High School last week, all of which I have carefully studied, it's an inescapable conclusion that every day we leave law enforcement in our schools, we run the risk of 1, further injury to students, staff, and officers; 2, damage to personal property; and 3, financial loss to the board due to lawsuits. In other words, even though only one of the 3 criteria is needed to trigger an emergency, all 3 aspects are clearly present in this case. The presence of law enforcement in our schools constitutes an emergency. Moreover, since the emergency would only affect an agenda item and not the changing of the time or location of a meeting, there is no practical risk to us in adding this item to the agenda. I realize some of my colleagues may disagree with the need to address the presence of law enforcement in our schools tonight, but this attitude is symptomatic of the very reason we need to add it to the agenda in the first place. Admirably, Dr. Polio has set the expectation that this district will confront problems head on and not stick our heads in the sand. This is precisely what the board also must do if we want to make the turnaround that is needed after the tenure of Dr. Hargens. The refusal to openly confront difficult questions is precisely why children have been abused and neglected in our Head Start program, why we may lose millions of dollars in federal funding for pre-K education precisely at the moment we can least afford to lose more revenue, and why we are under an unprecedented state audit. I decided to run for this position against a well-connected and independently wealthy incumbent board chair because, in my view, his leadership embodied the head-in-the-sand approach that was hurting our children and damaging our district. I'm not going to be a member of this board without doing everything in my power to prevent such negligence to continue. Whether or not we all agree on what should happen with police officers in schools, we owe it to the community to openly discuss tonight the horrific incidents that took place at J-Town High School last week and how we can prevent anything like that from ever happening again. I therefore move under Board Policy 01.44 that we add an action item 9A, Police in Schools, to the agenda. Thank you.
Before we make that motion, I would like to check with legal counsel to make sure that that would be actually proper and in accordance with state law. Mr. Mellon.
The board policy reflects the statute on meetings in the open meetings law, and that statute with respect to emergency meetings has been interpreted by the Kentucky Attorney General to mean an emergency that affects the meeting itself, the ability to hold the meeting, such as weather or fire or whatever, and not the subject of the meeting. So I do think that under state law that emergency provision in the statute doesn't apply, and therefore the emergency provision and the board policy, which follows the statute, would not apply either.
So because that would not apply according to state law, that you can make your motion, but we would be in violation of open meetings if we were to approve that.
Could I ask our attorney why the financial loss to the board aspect does not open the possibility of lawsuits that, if we don't act at the meeting, could result as a result of our inaction?
Again, I believe the Attorney General opinions that interpret emergency construe it to be an emergency that affects the ability of the board to hold the meeting and not a subject matter that's going to be brought up at the meeting.
Could I ask then why it includes the subject matter of the agenda in the provisions of the special meeting if the emergency clauses don't apply to it?
And those are 2 different legal issues. The statute also addresses the agenda at a special meeting and the ability to change it, and that can only be changed within 24 hours or no later than 24 hours prior to the meeting. The emergency meeting is a different subject, and again, that relates to the ability of the board to hold a meeting under emergency conditions rather than a subject matter on the agenda.
Could I ask Board Chair Brady then why you didn't put this on the agenda when I requested it more than 24 hours in advance of the special meeting?
Well, first of all, I received your message very early in the morning on Monday morning, so you may have sent that Sunday evening, but
Yeah,
I
9
didn't
hours.
receive it until then. And furthermore, at the time when your question was, how can you get this onto the agenda? I had forgotten that this was a special meeting. I answered your question by saying that you could make a motion to be able to add it to the agenda. Once I realized that, oh yes, that's right, we did change the date on this, even though it's on our regular Tuesday meeting night, we did change the date of that, and that's when I informed you that it would be on that would be part of a special meeting and therefore would not be susceptible to be able to change the agenda.
Why did you think this issue wasn't worthy of putting on the agenda without having to make a motion at the meeting?
Currently, there's an open investigation. Actually, I believe there's 2 open investigations at J-Town regarding this incident, and I think it would be prudent for the board to be able to wait for the results of those investigations to come back before making a decision.
I'm not saying we need to make a decision. Why did you choose to not discuss it at all on the agenda?
Again, I don't think that it would be prudent to actually have an open discussion or speculate until we have the results of the investigations back.
Okay, that's surprising to me.
It
So,
sounds like what happened
ma'am?
in J-Town is an emergency.
Can you get your hands off of her? You don't
Ma'am?
need to get your hands off her either. I think that's against the law too.
This constitutes an emergency.
That's the
Folks,
Especially since it's
if this continues, I'm going to ask you to leave. I'll direct staff to ask you to leave. So I would please ask that you would either,
it said children being assaulted is an emergency.
It is an emergency.
one more time, I'm going to ask you to please refrain from disrupting this.
The city has asked for this issue to be addressed regardless of investigation.
Security,
Be addressed.
will you please
I
remove
know I'm disrupting the meeting. I'm
the
disrupting.
folks that are disrupting the meeting? This is in violation of state law.
Hear my laughing.
We're asking you to leave, please. What? So we're going to adjourn the meeting at the moment due to a recommendation from security. So this meeting will be adjourned for at least the next 5 minutes. At this point, we are adjourned. We're going to take a quick recess. Let me rephrase that. Quick recess.
Justice.
Before there is the next item on our agenda will be the recommendation for approval of the meeting agenda. We've already discussed the issue here previously, so now is there a vote to approve the agenda? Motion made by Member Duncan, seconded by Member Geese. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes 6-1. Now on to our next item, which is a recommendation for approval of minutes of the previous meeting. Is there a vote to approve the minutes of the October 24th meeting? Motion made by Member Porter, seconded by Vice Chair Wilner. All those in favor? Motion passes. Our next item on our agenda will be the Superintendent's Report. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Polio to talk about this item. Dr. Polio?
Thank you, Chair Brady and board members. Once again, we'll be talking about our 3 areas for improvement today: improving climate and culture, increasing student learning, improving organizational coherence. First, with improving climate and culture, as you know, one of the first things I talked about when accepting the position was the desire to improve culture and climate within our district. I've spoken often about the need for having safe and healthy academic learning climates within all of our schools. Tonight we will present some data for your review on the short comprehensive school survey that was given last month to staff throughout the district. As you will see, there are positives from this survey and areas for growth. Changing culture and climate within our schools is a long-term task that requires skilled and decisive leadership with a team that is all on the same page. I have often stated that my own personal definition of culture is the attitudes, beliefs, and actions of adults in a school and how those impact student learning. Those attitudes, beliefs, and actions also have a major impact on the climate of a school. But changing and improving culture and climate is not an easy task. Recently, we have been faced with several issues in schools that have caused the school stakeholders and the community to question the culture and climate within a few of our schools. Incidents that have become very public have indicated a serious concern about the culture and climate of these schools, as well as safety for students. As superintendent, I want the board to know that as long as I am in this position, I will be very assertive about addressing issues that are a significant concern for our stakeholders. We must highlight the positives in our school culture and climate throughout the district, but my team and I also must be willing to actively address significant concerns within our schools. As stated last Thursday, we are currently investigating the situation at J-Town High School and other schools and plan to courageously work to improve the situation at those schools for the students and the staff. It is critical for us to have a complete picture of the problems, which at times might require a review or investigate specific situations or personnel within the school. We are committed to making those tough decisions while supporting the very difficult work of our teachers and our school leaders. But JCPS will proactively work to address culture and climate issues within our district as we move forward. Second of all is the commitment to increasing student learning. I would like to update you on our MAP assessment data. You have a handout that is also on the overhead that gives a background of the measure of academic progress, the assessment that we provided to all K through 8 students, and nearly 4,800 of our 9th grade where it was optional. The implementation window number 1 closed on October 26th. We will have a second testing window that will begin in January. Want to reiterate that this does not measure intelligence or capacity for learning. MAP data does allow us to make more informed instructional decisions for students when combined with student work or other formative assessments. So if you see below, as we tested our first round, we did have some sobering results that were not indicators of school success, but was a baseline and a first step for us. So as you can see, the number of students tested in elementary school during the window was 43,275. 97% of our elementary students, K through 5, were tested. You can see below we had a few reasons for not testing the other 3%. Middle school, we tested 20,182 students, 95%. And then, like I said, 4726 of our 9th grade students, which was 58%, of our ninth grade students. Below on the reading assessment, you will see the concerning part. As students arrive to us in K, our mean is above the norm or national average. As we move through 3, 5, and 8, we fall below that average. Part of that, this is the first time that we have taken the assessment. We are compared to other schools and districts that have taken the assessment many times, so it is an issue. But just like with math, which is the same way, as you can see below, we come in below the national average in math when we hit K, but we even fall farther behind when it comes to the progress as we make through K through 5 and then through 8th grade. So clearly we have work to do as we move forward. As we move into our second measure, our second testing in January, growth becomes an important indicator from the first round of assessment to the second round of assessment. So we will be able to see how we do on that. We are giving significant training on schools of how to use this data. First and foremost, we want them to become very good at understanding the data and using that to drive instruction. Secondly, we want them to begin to provide interventions, which could include things like on computers and software, but it's very important that PLCs and teachers use this data to help them drive their day-to-day instruction and also their interventions. You can see below there are a few reports that we produce for schools. I'm not going to specifically get into those, but we are providing the training for schools on how to use this. We want to continue to focus on a tight and a loose concept where certain things will be tight that we do in every school, and then other ways schools can identify the best use of this. Training sessions are coming up for all principals. We are committed to doing this, and I said in our work session, we are committed to ensuring that we have kindergarten-ready students, middle school ready, high school ready, and college ready as we move forward, and we're going to identify those as we move forward. So very important. We want it to be known that this assessment data is not the only data we will be using for readiness. We will also be using the skills that we believe are graduation profiles for students, the skills that we want students to walk away from with their backpack full, like leadership, like creativity, and those deeper learning skills. We're beginning to put that together. So we are working hard to make sure that we do that. As far as organizational coherence, tonight I would like to highlight the work of the Facilities Committee and our desire to be more coherent. We have met twice in October and November. The Facilities Committee is currently working on a recommendation for the board of how we will proceed for 2018-19 with some very important decisions that have to be made for the near future. As we move into the spring, we'll charge the Facilities Committee with making decisions down the road, 1920, 2021, and how we will implement those and bring it back to the board for a plan. Also wanted to note that by our next board meeting, we hope to have our Director of School Choice and our HR Diversity Hiring Specialist in place and ready to go. And finally, another important aspect of organizational coherence is being present in schools and having important conversations with principals and staff. I've been honored to join each of the board members in visits to 3 of their schools over the past week. Yesterday, I was able to visit 3 District 1 schools with Ms. Porter, King, Brandeis, and Cochran. Today, I had the opportunity to visit Ballard, Crosby, and Middletown Elementary with Ms. Horn. I will complete all board member visits to schools with Ms. Duncan on Friday. So it's been a great opportunity to have collaborative conversations with staff, principals, teachers, all school staff, with board members about how we can provide better service to our school. That concludes the superintendent report.
Thank you, Dr. Polio. The next item up on our agenda will be the persons requesting to address the board regarding action, information, or consent items, of which we do have 1 speaker. If Penny Mills would start coming to the front, please. Ms. Mills will be talking about the recognition of School Psychology Awareness Week. At this time, let me read our policy regarding public speakers. In accordance with Board Policy 01.421, the board expects that persons who have signed up to address the board will limit their remarks to the subject that they listed at the time they signed up. that their presentation will not include any defamatory or abusive remarks about the subject, and that they will present their remarks in a manner which is consistent with the orderly conduct of the meeting. Also, in accordance with board policy, the board reserves the right to limit, extend, or terminate discussion on any subject. Speakers before the entire board are not allowed to use props, displays, or any other objects during the presentations. However, informational handouts may be given to our assistant secretary to the board, which is to my right, for distribution prior to or following the meeting. Each speaker is allowed to have 3 minutes to address the board and may not share these minutes with any other speaker. At the end of 2.5 minutes, a bell will sound once. You will then have 30 seconds to finish your statement. At the end of 3 minutes, the bell will sound twice, indicating that your time is up. The superintendent will look into the speaker's issues and, if necessary, represent the board and follow up and recommended action to the board. The full board policy concerning public participation in open meetings is available for viewing on our website and next to our sign-up sheet out in the main lobby. So with that in mind, Ms. Mills, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening. You did receive some informational documents prior to the meeting that I'll reference as I speak with you today. And my name is Penny Mills, and I'm here with my colleagues in support of National School Psychology Awareness Week. We want to thank you for recognizing this endeavor as an effective way to improve collaboration and foster a thriving school community to help students graduate prepared, empowered, and inspired. Every year, a national organization chooses a theme for School Psychology Awareness Week, and this year's theme is Power Up, Be a Positive Charge. And this is meant to recognize students and staff's capacity for positive action. We're also proud to announce that Mayor Fisher has also recognized National School Psychology Awareness Week in Metro Louisville. School Psychology Awareness Week is also a promotion of school psychology as a profession and a career. The promotional material, Who Are School Psychologists?, explains how school psychologists help schools and the requirements for becoming one. Although other staff members may provide some of the services listed, school psychologists are unique in the depth and breadth of training received and comprehensive services provided. 60 graduate hours and internships are required before beginning work for us in schools. Training in educational policy, assessment, ethics, interventions, and counseling allows us to have a global view of students, understanding how services impact students not just in that moment and place, but in all aspects of their lives and their families. Research has shown that school psychologists improve students and school outcomes in instruction and learning, support healthy, successful students, create safe, positive school climates, improve assessment and accountability, and strengthen family-school partnerships. As mentioned earlier, JCPS has 40 school psychologists on staff who provide a multitude of services for our students, parents, and staff. You've recognized 2 of them earlier tonight for their awards received at our state conference, mainly for their work in district-level intervention systems. We're proud to say we've had many state award winners over the years and several school psychologists on staff who in the past have been honored as State of Kentucky School Psychologist of the Year. JCPS school psychologists present at state and national conferences, provide training on mental health first aid, mindfulness, trauma, and more. We provide in-service trainings in our schools. We're team leads, trainers, and responders for crisis response calls. We complete assessments for ECE services and develop 504 plans. We support RTI and MTSS interventions within our schools and provide consultation services to staff and parents. We provide support for mental health, suicide prevention, and threat assessments. We do individual and group counseling with our students. JCPS school psychologists love what we do, and we are really good at it. We would welcome the opportunity to discuss how our role in the district can influence student learning and organizational cohesion. Please feel free to contact us anytime. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That concludes the agenda item for persons requesting to address the board regarding action, information, or consent items. Now we're on to our next information item, or not information item, but public speaking opportunity. Persons requesting to address the board regarding non-agenda items. The same policy regarding public speakers does apply. First, we have 8 people that are signed up to talk to the board to discuss non-agenda items. We will start with Annie Hagler, and this is regarding a follow-up from our last meeting. So, Ms. Hagler.
Good evening. Thank you for letting us address the board this evening. My name is Katherine Hagler. This is my mother, Annie Hagler. My daughter is a student at No Middle School, and we addressed the board in September regarding the incident that happened on August 18th. My daughter was assaulted with a pencil that was tried to be stuck in her pants. She was also threatened by 4 young ladies. A pair of scissors were also put to her neck and her hair was cut. We have addressed the board. We have met with the Area 2 superintendent on this occasion, and we have also met with the principal as far as trying to help be a liaison for anti-bullying rallies that could happen and take place in the school system. Nothing has been done. This issue was never addressed. The girls that assaulted my daughter were never suspended. They were never put in ISAP. Nothing was ever taken place. My daughter is here tonight in the hallway crying because she's terrified. She's embarrassed. She's a victim of in-school bullying and assault, and nothing was addressed. As a parent, I am concerned for my daughter's well-being. The only thing that excites her at this moment is cheering. She has lost her demeanor for wanting to be at No Middle School or in school, period. She's terrified. She doesn't even go to the bathroom during the day. So there are times when she comes home rushing to get into the house because she's afraid that people will pick on her in the stalls. The young ladies kick the stalls in the bathroom. There are groups of students in No Middle School that know how to take students in the hallways away from the cameras to encourage one another to fight. But these issues have never been addressed. As a parent, as a grandmother, we want to know what could have been done to help my daughter. What things could have been implemented to help No Middle School address and JCPS address the bullying issue. Again, thank you for this time to be able to speak, but my heart breaks for my daughter. At this point, I am considering moving her out of JCPS, moving her into a private school. That may not help, but at this point, she does not want to be at No Middle. She does not want this issue to even be put out in public because she's embarrassed. And as a victim, you should never sit in silence and be afraid to open your mouth and use your voice. Thank you.
Thank you. As is our policy, as I said before, the superintendent will look into your issue and will, if necessary, will communicate back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the speakers list is David Lott to talk about the Jeffersontown High School incident. Mr. Lott.
Thank you for having me back up. Last week's events at Jeffersontown High School left us with a lot of questions. Chief among them is who's responsible for what happened. If you read a lot of social media, you'll hear a knee-jerk reaction siding with the Jeffersontown police, rooted more in stereotype and prejudices than on facts. You'll read phrases and comments like on Facebook like, throw the thugs out of the school, and no matter what you do, some kids just won't listen. Well, let's step back a little. Holding ourselves accountable is certainly an important personal value that should be instilled in our children. Providing guidance to them on how to live a life of integrity is a big part of how we demonstrate our love for them. But accountability should also be an expectation of our peers as adults, and more broadly speaking, we must hold the institutions in society accountable to the community as well. That includes this board. Our children learn more from our actions than they do from our words. The young people of today, especially those from marginalized groups, have grown up seeing images of those in power harm people who look like them and walk away with impunity. They have witnessed men in dominant positions in society engage in assaultive behaviors towards women and go on to be elected president or heads of movie studios while becoming richer in the process. They live in a world in which dominance, not dialogue, is valued, and great nations use violence to resolve conflicts instead of diplomacy. These same young people see and hear community leaders do a lot of talking about compassion, while at the same time these leaders hypocritically oversee the disinvestment and neglect in the neighborhoods many of these children live in. My point is that we have a choice in how we can educate and rear our children. We can either see our children as precious and treat them as the loving and whole adults we want them to become, or we seek to punish them into submission so that they are forced to fit into an unwelcoming and oppressive world. By and large, most behaviors are not innate, they are shaped. They are a way of voicing an unmet need. One of those often unspoken needs is to feel respected and valued. This is not an exercise in excuse making. Of course, children should not hit police or anyone, but as adults, one of our primary jobs is to listen to our children. As those familiar with trauma therapies call on us to do, we should not be asking young people like those in the recent altercation, what is wrong with you? But instead we should be asking, what happened to you? As the saying goes, our children need to know that we care before they care what we know. How can we show that we care? First, by not further criminalizing students by having law enforcement in our schools. Instead, we need to hire more counselors and assure that they are culturally competent and trained in trauma responses. And finally, we need to empower our students and make sure that training in peer mediation skills is not seen as ancillary to their studies, but is integrated into the curriculum. By doing these things, we will show respect to our children with the message that we see them, we hear them, and we value them. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person up on our speaker list is Barbara Boyd regarding concerns of JCPS. Ms. Boyd? I'm going to wait, and just in case she's in a different room, we do have an overflow room. If Ms. Boyd shows, then we'll move, we'll give her another opportunity to speak if she just doesn't have an opportunity to be able to get back in here. Next on the list will be Chris Harmar regarding J-Town and investigations. Mr. Harmar.
Good evening, members of the board, Chair, Superintendent Poli. I'm with the Fellowship of Reconciliation, 1,500 households in Jefferson County. It's with a sad heart, I have to say, the Jeffersontown High School incident is not a news story. Sadly, it is one more very public example of how the school-to-prison pipeline is playing out today. There's a lot of detail to be sorted out for sure, but we can already ask ourselves if the outcomes for the two African-American brothers was anywhere close to proportional to the initial student-on-student fight over earphones. Of course it was not. There was fault on both sides, but the students had no weapons, nor drugs. There was no sexual assault, nothing that might reasonably trigger a call for backup beyond the engagement of JCPS staff at the school who are trained in restraint techniques and familiar with any requirements of student IEPs. It was fighting while black, I'm afraid, a pattern reflected year after year in our district's disproportionate suspension rates for black males from lower income households. That should not be reason enough to call in police backup and those officers who would not be trained specifically for de-escalation and response in our schools. Now, we do appreciate that there will be a pair of JCPS reviews that are now started, I guess. Our concern is about their breadth and their impartiality and independence. First, breadth. Jeffersontown police actions are not covered directly by these investigations. The police officers, both the school resource officer and the others called in, are not JCPS employees. If there was an issue between the SRO and the principal, they can meet, but the police chief is the ultimate arbiter under the memorandum of understanding. The chief has already said everything was done right by his officers and they are still on the job. The only lever the JCPS has is whether to give 30 days notice and terminate the SRO contract that was just approved in August. The board discussion on that contract must start immediately in public, and it should have been on the agenda tonight. I thank my board member, Chris Kolb, for his efforts in that behalf. We believe the Jeffersontown SRO should at least be temporarily removed from the school by the principal until the board discussions reach a conclusion, and the students who have witnessed this have had time and professional help to process the trauma of what they saw and experienced. All the language in the SRO agreement talks about wanting, when possible, for the SRO to establish relationship with students, de-escalate conflicts as teachers do, and to learn of and work with the individual education plan requirements when is possible under the contract. And who decides that? The police. It seems even if the SOR is well trained, once the SRO determines law enforcement action is necessary, JCPS has no say. That itself is enough right now to reconsider maintaining the SRO program in Jeffersontown and elsewhere in the district. As for the JCPS reviews, We want to know if there are J-Town parents of color who will be intimately involved. Is there a suitable, credible community advocate involved for assessing police accountability, like Dr. Ricky Jones, and external juvenile criminal justice expertise with no ties to JCPS. We in the community at large look forward to hearing the answers and seeing the results. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harmar. Did Ms. Boyd, I would ask if you keep it down for a moment. Did Ms. Boyd make it back in here? All right, so I'm gonna take that as a no. Next will be Kendall Boyd regarding the J-Town High School incident. You have the floor when ready.
Good evening, Dr. Polio, esteemed members of the board. My name is Kendall Boyd. I'm the Executive Director of the Louisville Metro Human Relations Commission. I'm here in my capacity tonight to say that I'm ready to put action and compassion into the work that we do. We've heard several speakers already speak about that. We preach about compassion, but it's never followed here in Louisville Metro government. In my capacity, I'm ready to impose that compassion into our schools to protect our children. With all due respect, Dr. Polio, I do have a letter that is addressed to you. Here on my left is Mr. Reginald Glass. He is the chair of our HRC Advocacy Board. On my right is Don Wilson, one of our Advocacy Board members, here in a support capacity to, one, ask you what we can do to help you look into this matter. We're willing to donate resources, time, and energy to get to the bottom of this so that we can help our children and at the same time let our teachers teach and our students learn. We are requesting a thorough, expeditious, and unbiased investigation into this incident and an immediate follow-up and report out on what further actions will be taken as a result of that investigation. Again, we will offer time, energy, and resources as needed to help you in this matter to ensure that our city remains a compassionate city. I will deliver these letters to Madam Secretary here to the left, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you. Thank you for your time. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Up next is Sherry Showalter regarding the J-Town High School incident. Ms. Showalter, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you for speaking to me or listening to me speak to you tonight. I come to you this evening from the perspective of a parent of two students that attend J-Town High School. Both of them love J-Town. One's a junior, one is a freshman. The teachers at J-Town pour into my children each and every day. Anytime I've contacted the school or I've met with the staff, they have been accommodating, they've been positive, they are supportive. I do have concerns, however, in regards to the safety of my children. The school is not secure from people on the outside, and recent happenings in the city and at the school, of course, have raised my concerns even further. I'm concerned about multiple things. First of all, I know that at least one of you want the contract to be ended with J-Town Police Department. However, I would like to urge you to change your mind. I know that you believe in restorative practices, and I do believe that those teachers use restorative practices as much as possible. But I do think that there's a time in which further discipline, if you will, needs to be used. I think it would be a horrible decision to pull the SROs out of the school, particularly on the day of the incidents, based on the circumstances from the previous weekend that has not been discussed on the news. There were 6 students that were shot in the California neighborhood. That was on the Friday before this incident occurred. And 5 of those 6 students were from J-Town. Because of that happening on Friday night, Monday morning I contacted the school because I was made aware by my sister-in-law, who's not even involved in the school, found out that there was going to be extra police presence because they were concerned about some retaliation that might occur. I contacted the school Monday morning, found out that yes, in fact, there would be extra police presence. There was no increased threat, however, but they would be there before school, after school, and throughout the day. Now fast forward to Wednesday. The students are at lunch, the fight breaks out, and things go from bad to worse, in which a student attacked a police officer. If there were no police officers present, I can't help but wonder what would have happened to the security guards who are unarmed in the school. Students have to be held accountable for their actions. This is why I really feel like it is necessary to keep an SRO in the building. Taking the SRO out would be a grave mistake. More importantly, what I want to tell you is that I found out a couple years ago and walked into the school the other day to prove my point. And I'm skipping a lot of what I read because I know I'm about out of time, but I want you to know that there are school entrances, doors that are unlocked at that school. And I, the other day, parked my car, got out of the car, walked in through one of the back doors, and it was wide open. I walked down the hall, said hi to adults, students, people smiled, and I continued to walk, at which point one of the administration did eventually ask me if I had somewhere I was going. I thanked her for stopping me, proceeded to the office, talked to Dr. Kingsley.
Ma'am, your time has expired.
I know, but other people did too, and you all kept them going.
I've given you the exact same amount of time I gave you.
All right, so anyway, you see my concern, because that's the state law, that
Thank you.
they have to have the doors locked.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next on the list, I'd appreciate it if we can keep that to a minimum, please. Next on the list will be Michelle Wagley regarding student violence. Ms. Wagley, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, good evening, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. I am the Transition Center instructor at J-Town High, where kids are trying to recover credits. I have been teaching for 18 years, and I have seen an increase everywhere I have taught of violence that is brought into school. And with that, not all teachers are not trained to restrain. I'm 5'5". I'm not going to put myself in that situation. And we are seeing an increase. Last week alone, I was threatened by students 3 or 4 times that they were going to beat me up and threatened me. If we did not have our SRO or J-Town police departments, I'm not safe in that school because of the situations that are happening. I would like to call out my district's representative. What's really interesting about this is I've never seen him in my school. I've taught there for 5 years. I would challenge you to come and teach a week in my shoes and see what we have to deal with. I get cussed out daily, I get threatened, and it's getting worse. Over the years, I have seen this increase. And at this point, I do not feel safe. And having an SRO or having extra police makes me feel safe. And that allows me to teach. Because when we have these disruptions from these students who are old enough to make their own decisions, they are putting us in harm's way and not allowing us to teach the way we should teach. And as far as the SRO goes that we have at our school, people don't realize the positives that he's bringing to our school. He has a group that he can work with during enrichments in our school, says talk with a cop. He has great relationships with students. I don't think people have seen the true happenings of what occurred and what the climate is like in our school because nobody has visited up to this point. And everybody is assuming and making speculations, not being at the school, not knowing exactly what is going on in our schools, because it's not just our high school. Fights are occurring everywhere. My neighbor had a desk thrown at her by a 2nd grader. So you are fooling yourself if you think that this is not occurring everywhere. And I would just like to say, if you do take away our SROs because of the increase in the violence, you're putting us in harm's way. You're putting the other teacher in harm's way, and you're putting other students in harm's way. And I don't believe that that is the purpose of us going to school, is basically becoming an SRO ourselves. And I'm not going to do it because I'm 5'5". I'm not putting myself in the position where I can get hurt. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wagley. Next up on the list will be Lenora Moore, and this will be the last speaker. Ms. Moore, if you can come forward, this will be regarding the treatment of the treatment of kids in the school system. Is Ms. Moore here? Ms. Moore? Ms. Moore, okay. I will assume that she's not here. And this concludes our speakers on non-agenda items. Our next item on our agenda will be action items, of which there are none, so therefore we'll move on to information items. The first item on our information item, or the first information item to consider will be the acceptance of the mini comprehensive school survey results. I will turn it over to Dr. Polio to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair Brady. We sent you some results from our comprehensive school survey that was provided in October, several weeks ago, I believe, so you have an overview of that. That does include 13 questions that we provided to 8,000 plus staff members, which gives us an overall look at the culture and climate from our employees' standpoint in these 13 areas. Plus, we are able to drill down into each school to take a look at school by school culture and climate and where we need to go. We've challenged our principals at a last principal meeting a week ago, last Wednesday, to come up with ways to use this data, collaborate with their colleagues and strategies to move forward and improve that culture and climate throughout the year. Dr. Dossett will have a short presentation for us on the, did I ruin it?
I think you said it all. But
okay, well, that'll make it quick then. So we'd like to have, then you can underscore what I said. So how about we start with that?
Great. So I'd like to begin by just giving a big picture of why climate and culture is important. So at our work session, we talked about the need for research to drive why we're doing what we're doing and our strategies. And so when we look at the importance of school climate and culture, we know that positive school culture is related to a number of positive outcomes, looking at higher student engagement, higher academic achievement, fewer discipline problems, lower absenteeism, lower rates of drug and alcohol use. So those are some of the reasons why what the research says around the importance of a positive school culture in terms of driving change for positive outcomes. As Dr. Polio mentioned, this was a survey. It was a brief survey, 13 items from October, the beginning of October. We had over 8,000 employees respond, so this was just given to our employees. That's about 12% less than last year, but it was within a 5-day window compared to a 2-month window from previous years. And so when you look at each item by item, we didn't see any items that decreased by more than 5%. They were all either large changes or all within 5% change. Our biggest areas of improvement were in the superintendent and central office administrators provide effective leadership, and school that we manage funding in a effective and efficient manner. That's still the lowest rated item on the survey, but showed a 16% change. In terms of the superintendent providing effective leadership, that was our highest in 10 years when I went back and looked at that data over the course of 10 years. So there were some particular items that we still additionally saw increases in. Recommend JCPS is a good place to work, would send our own children to JCPS schools, receiving information on a regular basis. So those were all some positive changes. And then areas that we can continue to work on having to do with satisfied with our workplace. We saw a decrease there, as well as supervisor providing feedback on job performance. Now that might be related to the time of year in which the survey is administered at the beginning of the school year versus in the spring, where we tend to see a little bit more evaluation work going on there. And then we did see a decline in my school provides a caring and supportive environment for students, although it's still at 93%. So when we look at the data by...
Go back one slide real quick. I just wanted to highlight a couple other things. A couple things we're really proud of, I think. Recommend JCPS is a good place to work. That went up 4.3. That change we felt was a very positive one. Even though still lower than we want, we think going up 3.4 on I would rather send my own children to JCPS than a non-JCPS school was a positive move for us when we looked at the number in a 6-month period. So we were pleased with that. One of the ones we are digging into, well, 2 of them, Dina hit on the caring environment. We got to continue to work for that. We believe that's a sense of belonging for students. And the second one is that sense of feedback, or excuse me, supervisor gives me adequate feedback. That's something we can control immediately and want to make sure we do that. So those are 2 things that we really hone in on as growth areas.
So when we looked at the data by classified staff versus certified staff, we didn't see any differences in the pattern in terms of what got the highest rated item around receiving information, the lowest rating around funding, the most improved around superintendent leadership, and the largest decline in terms of workplace satisfaction. So those patterns didn't change across our role groups. So we also had an open-ended item where we asked our employees, what do you need to succeed? What are some barriers that we need to look at so that you can do your very best in your job? And we had over 3,600 responses to that open-ended item. So we went through and looked for themes across those open-ended responses. And in general, on the next slide, we have some more specific examples, but increased coordination of district support, that was really centered around our professional development model and how we might look at that model in our schools a little bit differently. Addressing staffing, so the need for substitute teachers and providing additional support for new teachers, more supplies. I think we would find that on any survey that we ask. Increased support for behavior and mental health issues. So I think we've heard that again tonight, and that is a recurring theme that we're seeing as well. Technology support and equipment, and then addressing school climate and culture. And so,
is that the first time we did the open-end?
no, we've done open-ended
Okay.
in prior. That was the first time we, I think, had a question specifically about what you need to succeed.
We felt that we weren't sure what we were going to get, but we did get some good themes that I think are important for us as we move forward with budgeting too, to look at that data.
Right. Just looking at particular items, again, the professional development model, need for to support behavior and mental health issues, and then addressing school climate and culture. So making sure that we've got consistency in our responses from administration there. So key takeaways where we're showing some strength, having a score of 90% agreement or higher, or receiving information, providing a caring and supportive environment. Even though that went down, it was still relatively high. Feeling safe and secure. Areas that we want to dig into a little bit more in terms of potentially an opportunity for improvement. So we're rated below 70%, or we saw a decrease around funding. Sending your own children to JCPS, that was an increase, but still at 65% workplace satisfaction and supervisor feedback. So when we look at how we're going to use this data, Dr. Polio mentioned that we reviewed this data at the November 1st principal meeting, and I was sitting in on an elementary group of 3 or 4 principals, and there was a really good conversation about what systems they have in place to provide feedback to their teachers, communicate around when a student is removed from a class for behavior issues, what kind of support and follow-up are they having. Also, good conversation around how to communicate with parents. So how do we involve parents in dealing with behavior and mental health issues? And so it was a really good opportunity for schools to learn from one another around systems that they have in place. other next steps will be to disaggregate the data a little bit more and look at its relationship with some of our other surveys. So this was an employee survey, but we can compare it to the TEL results. This is data that we've shared with JCTA so that they can get it out to their building reps and so that principals and teachers can have conversations about this information. And then lastly, I just want to share a short video with you about what our own staff say around climate and culture, and just going to show one of them for now.
Based upon conversations with kiddos and based upon thinking about my own experience in education, we need to address the fact that in order to engage kids the way they need to be engaged, we have to focus on making them feel comfortable and welcome, because they'll never engage unless the community is built and they feel that safe support. Belonging to me is finding a way to build a community for those kids so they know that they're loved, you know, and all be all. They know they're loved and it's a safe place to go.
And one other quote from the open-ended items, on the positive note. I came from a school where we were told not to do morning meetings, where we weren't supposed to have too much fun, and hugging wasn't promoted. I'm now at Sanders, where unicorns probably secretly roam the halls. It overflows with positive vibes, but it works. I'm happier and not contemplating getting a different job, and my kids seem happier too. So just want to kind of end on that positive note, knowing that there's a lot of information that we have available to us, a lot of good conversations that principals and teachers can have around the importance of a positive school climate, and where there's areas that we need to dig in and do a deeper dive to see if we're seeing a trend that's moving in the wrong direction, how can they learn from each other and work on that area. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Dossett. Any board members have any questions? We'll go with Member Kolb and then Member Duncan.
I do want to note that, and I hope this appears in media stories that no doubtedly will be on TV and in the papers, that 90% of people reported being safe and secure at school, which was the third highest response. So I think we need to contextualize everything that happens. As everybody knows by this point, one of my chief concerns about culture and climate is the presence of law enforcement in schools. And I wanted to share, I received an email yesterday from a law enforcement expert, and I'd just like to share it. He did ask that I not share his name because he doesn't want to take a chance on speaking about things he doesn't know about. So it says, Dr. Kolb, I applaud your efforts in support of a review of the current system of local police officers assigned to our public schools. From what I have read, you raise legitimate concerns. My name is, most importantly, I have close ties to JCPS with family members working in the district and a grandchild attending an elementary school. Second, I am a retired lieutenant from the Louisville Police Department, now LMPD, former teacher with JCPS. Due to my wife's transfer, we moved out of state. I served as Director of Security Services for 7.5 years with a large public school district, serving over 70,000 students. While there, I earned my doctorate in educational administration and then served as a college professor for 13 years before returning home to Louisville. I just share this bit of background with you because I dealt with some of the issues that arise when contracting with local police agencies to provide security to the schools. So many times, often with the best of intentions, conflicts between law enforcement and public schools create more problems than are solved, including the loss of control by the school district over the officers who work for a different agency, often with a very different mission. I am more in the camp of schools providing their own security, along with establishing a close relationship with law enforcement through reporting of incidents and demanding professional response when called upon. I urge caution. When a horrific incident occurs in a school, or as we have seen this weekend at church, many will call for an increased presence of armed officers in schools. But is this what we want for our society? I want to point out that as a former police lieutenant, I am very supportive of law enforcement. I want to encourage a positive relationship between the various police agencies in our community and the schools within their jurisdictions. My past experiences were just that at a few high schools, but I admit that was several years ago. Certainly anywhere in our communities, we would like to have a police officer present when a tragic event occurs, the church this past weekend, but police can't be everywhere. Even with an officer present, such as Columbine High, these horrific acts occur. Best to you in your review of the current policy and system. I also want to share an email that I've been...
Member Kolb?
No, this is
No,
on topic. This is on topic.
I would
wanna
love
share
for
an
us to
email.
be on topic, but the last item that you mentioned was not on topic, and I was very...
This all relates to culture and climate in our schools. You're going to let me talk.
This is...
Chris, you're going to let me talk.
This
okay?
is regarding the mini comprehensive school survey. If you have questions, and if you have comments, as I advised
Well,
you
I'm going to
before,
keep talking. You can
that
cut my mic if you
have
want,
the
all right?
board
So I've had
reports
the
to be
ability
able
to watch
make
the video
those.
of the very start of the incident from 4 angles. In this case, there was a completely routine altercation between 2 students. No punches were ever thrown. One of the J-Town police officers rapidly escalated the situation, thereby creating a huge disturbance that put several hundred children at risk. Had that officer not inserted himself into the situation, I am completely confident that school staff would have kept the situation under control and de-escalated the tension, as they are very experienced in doing. And I will note that in page 3 of our agreement with J-Town Police Department, it explicitly states that J-Town Police are not to involve themselves in disciplinary matters. They are only to be there for law breaking. I challenge anyone to watch this video and argue that there was a law broken. The officer's actions were completely uncalled for, and he put kids and J-Town staff at risk. The Board of Education approves all contracts with law enforcement, and I'm going to continue to advocate that we cancel our contract with J-Town Police because they violated the contract and in so doing put kids and staff at risk. There is now definitive research into school discipline that tells us that cops in schools are like a security blanket. They make some people feel safer, but they don't actually make schools safer. And in some cases, like this one, they make the situation much worse. I've been advocating for effective means to make schools safer for over 5 years, dating to before I was on the board. Thankfully, JCPS is finally in the process of implementing these strategies in several schools. Unfortunately, they have not yet been implemented in J-Town, and I'll be advocating that J-Town be put on a fast track to implementation of those policies. It's difficult for me to imagine how having police in schools will create a more positive experience for many of the students who had a taser aimed at them or witnessed their friends being slammed to the floor without provocation, pushed and shoved by J-Town PD. I understand everyone's concerns. However, I will continue to make decisions based on hard facts, evidence, and research. We had a few people here talk about kids needing to be held accountable. Absolutely, but what message are we sending when we refuse to hold adults accountable for completely unacceptable behavior? I want to stress that this was a completely routine altercation that happens literally thousands of times in our high schools, and it resulted in 2 felonies for teenagers because an officer involved himself in a completely routine situation. Our speaker talked about doors being open at J-Town High School. That's what happens when you have SROs. You rely on it. It's like a security blanket. You think, we don't need to worry about security. We're safe. We're just not going to worry about the doors being open where anybody can come in. The police officers put in the school to prevent violence ended up causing it. That is what happens when we have law enforcement in schools. We have increased violence in some schools precisely because of our law and order approach. And it's time that we end it, starting with ending the JCPS contract with J-Town Police. Thank you.
Member Duncan and then Member Geese.
I'd just like to thank Dr. Dossett for her presentation and move that we accept the report. That's the motion I have on the floor, that we accept the report.
There's a motion made on the floor to accept the report and move on to other business. Is there a second to that?
I was going to ask a question to Dina.
That's why I called on you first.
Sorry.
But we need to. Is there a question to the amendment or to the motion that's been made? All right. Then there's been a motion, and we need to vote on the motion before we can move on. There's no second. Hearing no second, we'll continue on. Ms. Duncan.
Okay, good. Well, back to the survey, and I thought that it was ironic that we had such high scores in the areas of where people felt safe or they felt their school had a supported supporting environment, caring, supporting environment, and then we have that 65% say they would rather send their kids to JCPS, which is, you know, kind of startling, because if you think the schools have all these safe and secure and supportive environments, why wouldn't you want your child to go to a JCPS school? So, I mean, I just thought that was ironic. Something's going on here in the thinking, maybe not in their school where they are, but maybe in thinking about others that they're hearing about or where their kids attend. There's something that's missing here in our connection with how we think our students are viewing things, or how we think students feel about things. I mean, it'd be kind of interesting to see how teachers feel about how their students are viewing what schools are like. But I thought that was ironic, though, that we say we think everything looks good, and yet, boom. That's not a very strong number to say, but we want our kids to go to JCPS schools. It's not a very strong number.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. It really is something that we could dig into a little bit deeper. I know when we administer the full survey to all of our staff, parents, and students, one of the things that we find is when we ask, are you satisfied with your school versus are you satisfied with JCPS, it's always higher when it's your school than the district as a whole. So I think you're right in terms of there's other decisions being factored in.
Very good. Well, thank you, Dina.
Any further questions or comments regarding this particular agenda item? Hearing none, is there a motion to receive the acceptance of the comprehensive school, mini comprehensive school survey results? Motion made by Member Geese, second by Member Horn. All those in favor? Motion passes. At this time, we're going to take a short recess. We're going to recess for about 5 minutes. We're going to come back to order. The next item on our agenda will be the acceptance of the JCPS corrective action plans to address the KDE management audit. For this particular item, we're going to turn it over to Dr. Polio to introduce this and start us off with this. Dr. Polio.
Thank you, Chair Brady and board members. As you know, in October, we received part of audit findings from the Kentucky Department of Education concerning 3 areas that we needed to address for compliance. The first one, career and technical education and the reporting of that data. The second one was ECE and some issues surrounding how we address students in ECE, and then finally restraint and seclusion and tracking of that data. So we have worked with the KDE in creating a corrective action plan to send back to them within the 30 days. We present it to you this evening. We've worked with our principals already on addressing these issues, so they are well underway and being corrected at this time. So I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Dossett and Dr. Coleman to give us a brief overview of the corrective action plan.
Great. So we'll briefly highlight the process that we've undergone for a while, give a review of the history around this, and then talk about, I think what we can do is highlight some common themes for improvement moving forward. So in terms of the management audit, it actually started as a management review in August of 2016. The initial findings were presented in February of 2017, and then it moved from a management review to a management audit in April. We received the report on the initial findings in September, and those findings were around career tech, ECE, and restraints and seclusion. And then KDE partnered with us to provide some technical assistance as we were developing our corrective action plan. That was a level of support from KDE that we haven't previously received in terms of a management review process, and so we really appreciated that level of support and collaboration that they provided in terms of giving technical assistance. We submitted the plans to KDE for feedback, and then the final version was submitted at the end of October. I think we've also received feedback from the commissioner that that the plans were in good standing and that we could move forward with our improvement strategies. And one item that I've omitted from this timeline is actually last Wednesday, November 1st, we reviewed the corrective action plans with all of our principals so that principals had a clear understanding of what the next steps for improvement were. So when we were looking at the findings, there were 3 findings for career and technical education that mostly dealt with pathway, the alignment between pathways, schedules, and the data in the TED system, which is their way that they collect information on career tech. Also dealing with training so that people have an understanding around the data requirements for that. And actually we had our first training. KDE came in today and trained multiple people from each school. We have a follow-up training on November 13th for the remaining schools. So we're well on our way in implementing some corrective action strategies around career and technical education. With IDEA, there were 8 findings and then 2 additional findings in a supplemental report. Most of those findings were regarding the services that were provided, ensuring that staff are aware of different options around placement and alternative settings, those types of findings. And then restraint and seclusion really had to do with providing additional training to improve the understanding level from our staff. So those are, in general, the findings that we received from KDE. And when we were looking at all 3 of the areas, there were some common themes that we saw that we could work on and for areas of improvement. One just really has to do with creating written procedures and protocols for staff to follow, providing training for our staff to improve their level of understanding, and then follow-up processes to check on implementation. And then from those data analysis and reporting of fidelity, providing individual support to schools on a regular basis based on that data analysis. And then we also committed in our corrective action plans to continue to work with Katie to provide technical assistance as we implement our plans. And so just to kind of summarize, really looking to make sure that we have written protocols, that we train on those protocols, and that we follow up and check for implementation of how we're implementing those protocols. And that's those are the three big key takeaways for us. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Coleman to add anything.
I'll just add a couple things. Our principals have been extremely conscientious and very concerned and very eager to learn and to make sure that our schools are in compliance. Dr. Zeitz, Dr. Everett, Christy Rogers have done a wonderful job on their plans, and have also done a really good job in providing principals some quick reference sheets so that they don't have to dig through files to find what they need. And so I think those are going to be really helpful from a principal perspective. And I think, again, I'll just say I've been here to talk about the Head Start corrective action plan, and it was really interesting to work on all of these, because the thing that continued to surface, I think, as Dina mentioned, is the need for procedures and protocols. And so I think this is going to help us to become very systematic and consistent in our approaches. So certainly lots of good has come from this.
I would also like to add that a challenge for us has been the KDE recommended that in several of these situations that we train school staff to do it, and it's not centralized in nature. So we are still working to ensure, though, that yes, we provide the responsibility of school personnel to do it, but we still provide the oversight necessary so that we're not back in this boat again. So that's a challenge for us as we move forward and look at our structure and everything that we do, that how we can consistently monitor and provide the oversight so that we don't have these problems anymore.
Do any board members have any concerns or questions? Member Duncan.
I just have a question about, I mean, this was called the management audit, but this is not the complete management audit findings, is that correct? We have other findings that will be coming in other areas?
Yes.
Okay, do we have any idea of when those other findings will be released?
No, we don't. When we got this letter, it was indicated that it could be 4 or 5 weeks. That time has passed. So we are not sure when that will come.
Member or Vice Chair Wellner.
So I'll start with the procedural request, and so this is really 3 separate corrective action plans, and I would just like to request that when we have the motion to accept, that we vote on them on 3 separate, vote on the plan separately, is what I'm trying to say.
Just so I can clarify, I just want to ask if there were any objections to, it's not a motion, but to any objections to voting on these items separately? Okay,
So I just had a number of questions, and first of all, I know this was a tremendous amount of work, and I know the amount of collaboration with KDE, and so thank you both, to you and the staff people under you. I actually looked up under, Robert's rules, what does it mean to accept a report or a plan, and it means that the body assumes responsibility for it. And I just had some questions, some things that were not clear in my mind. I submitted questions in advance and got responses that then raised more questions, but I didn't have time to ask the questions or let alone get answers. So there are a few things that I'm just a little unsettled about in the corrective action plans. So one of them has to do with the interim academic settings this is in the IDEA part of the corrective active plan. So there are 4 elementary schools that are selected, and it says they're regional, but 2 are in West Louisville within a mile of each other, and 2 are in Newburgh within 3 miles of each other. So I got the answer, but I just have lots of questions. I don't feel ready to assume responsibility personally for those placements yet at this time. And then the other, there were some small things, I won't go into all of them, but then with the restraints and the seclusion cap, I saw that, I think KDE with the Safe Crisis Management, that's their bar. I personally believe we in JCPS need to have an even higher bar. So for starters, to get compliant with KDE is a very good thing. But when there are restraints, there will be injuries. And while I'm skeptical that we can not eliminate restraints altogether, and particularly in cases of fighting and so forth. But when kids have anxiety, emotional disturbances, lots of triggers, trauma, it's very easy for kids to escalate, and there are lots of methods for de-escalating. And in fact, the response I got talked about all the things we would do to try to avoid restraint, but I didn't see that in the plan. So at this point, I'm very comfortable with one of the plans, and the other 2, I'm just, again, not personally ready to say, yes, I assume responsibility for these. So that's where I'm coming from on that.
Questions and concerns from other members? Okay. Hearing none, then we will, I'm sorry, Member Horn.
I just wanted to make a statement that I really, this process was interesting. We were kind of surprised back in 2016 in August with like 1 day notice to go to an interview. Remember that, you all? And we didn't weren't really told, what it was. I wasn't sure what it was. That was the review by the Department of Ed. And then to have this come out, I think that I'm very, just kind of like the Head Start report, I'm very concerned about the findings. I appreciate the diligence of our staff and our teachers and our principals to putting a plan together to change and try to make sure that we're providing a safe learning environment for all of our children. But I am concerned about these findings, and just wanted to make sure that I said that. I take this very seriously. I'm thrilled to see we've already calendared, the follow-up to the board on, reporting back on these 3 items. If the Kentucky Department of Ed comes out with additional items, I know that they'll be handled, just in the same professional manner, and hopefully we can really, affect change that'll better our students. The EBD classrooms, I know that in in District 3, we do have elementary level, large EBD classrooms. It is an interesting, very difficult, sometimes situation, because there hasn't been as much support for those classrooms. So the hope is that with microscope on this, that they will be provided with sufficient and adequate support. But I just wanted to make sure that I said publicly that I just take this very seriously, and I appreciate that our staff is doing the same at JCPS.
One piece that I just want to add as it relates to behavior supports, and while it may not be explicitly mentioned in the corrective action plan in enough detail, there is a few action items. There are a few action items that refer to our multi-tiered system of support, and within those attachments of evidence that has a spectrum of services from a restorative practice, PBIS, to restraint and seclusion, but it's not a single response for a behavior. So I do want to highlight that piece as well.
Member Porter?
I just want to repeat the comment that I made during the work session as it pertains to all the corrective action plans, that it is the responsibility of this board to see that all funding is in place so that everything can be done correctly, and that we hopefully do not have to incur these this kind of thing again. So my pledge to this district is to see to it as a board member that we are funding everything that we need to do for the children of Jefferson County. We cannot do it without putting money in place and without putting people in place to get this done. So that is my pledge, because it is that important to me and this district. Thank you.
Okay, seeing there's just no further discussion, and in accordance to Vice Chair Wilner's suggestion, we will vote to receive these items individually. The first, is there a motion to receive the Career and Technical Education Carl Perkins findings? Motion made by Member Horn, second by Member Porter. All those in favor? Motion passes. Second item to receive will be the item regarding Individuals with Disabilities and Education Act. Is there a motion to receive that? Motion made by Member Horn, seconded by Member Kolb. All those in favor? All those opposed? Vote is 6-1. Third item will be the item regarding restraint and seclusion. Is there a vote to, or a motion to receive this particular item? Motion made by Member Kolb. Is there a second? Motion made by, or second by Member Horn. All those in favor? All those opposed? And motion passes again 6-1. Thank you so much. I appreciate all your hard work on this item. Now we're going to move on to our third informational item, which is an update regarding the superintendent search. I will read from a statement here, so this information can then be updated onto our superintendent search page on our website. In late September, the board issued an RFP for a firm to provide public relations, community relations services relating to the superintendent search. This firm will assist the board to obtain input from the community and stakeholders about the qualities and capabilities that are desired in a superintendent. At our October 23rd meeting, the board voted to award the contract to one of the three bidders on the condition that this firm provide the board their plans on how they will reach out to all areas of the community through an equitable process in which each segment and population of the community will be involved. The firm has submitted a letter describing its plans, such as outreach, and they are satisfactory to the board. Therefore, the board will enter into a contract with this firm, Bandy Carroll Helleridge. The process of attaining community and stakeholder input is expected to begin later this month and continue through December and January. As required by Kentucky law, the board will receive advice from a superintendent screening committee that is composed of one board member appointed by the board chair, two teachers elected by the teachers in the district, one principal elected by the principals in the district, one parent elected by the parents of the parent-teacher associations of the schools in the district, one non-teacher employee elected by the non-teacher employees in the district, and if a minority member is not otherwise elected or appointed to the committee, one minority parent member, elected by parents in an election conducted by the board. As of tonight, all members of the committee have been selected. The membership of the committee is as follows. Board member, Chris Brady. Teachers, Brent McKim, Beth Fuller. Principal, Julie Cummings. First parent, Karen Bennett. Classified employee, Sue Foster. And minority parent, Yvette Gentry. For several weeks, the board has been advertising the position, the superintendent position in national and state publications and online job post listings that are widely read by educators, including minority educators. The project manager has been receiving responses to the advertisements from interested educators and has been providing these persons with an informational brochure about the district and an application form. The process will continue until the deadline for submitting applications, December 1st. Applications will be reviewed by the screening committee and by the members of the board. The process of reviewing applications is expected to take place through December and January. The board hopes to select the finalists for the superintendent position and to interview the finalists in February. The board hopes to select the superintendent by the middle of March so that he or she can begin work by April 1st. As a reminder to the community, the JCPS website includes a page that contains updated information about the superintendent search, including answers to frequently asked questions about the search process. You can reach this webpage by clicking on the superintendent search button on the homepage of the JCPS website, and that will soon include all of these comments. So that is the update regarding the superintendent search. Are there any concerns or questions about this update? Member Porter.
I would like to know if, when we go to the website and you go to the superintendent search, if there's a posting that will summarize the work that we've done as opposed to have to go to frequently asked questions, because I may not know that to do that. So there are the information that you've shared tonight and other things. Could that in fact just be posted? So when you go to the website, it's right there, a summary of what we've done up to this point, the dates and all that that you've mentioned tonight. I guess we have talked about, I'm not sure that the board came up with that, but whatever. My concern is people do not know. And we are trying to make this transparent, and we use that word, but until we start doing more to put it out there so that it's more visible, because everyone that goes to the website would not look for information under frequently asked questions. I mean, that might make sense to some, but it also may not make sense to all. So if we are in fact trying to be transparent for people to know, I think it's important that we put it out there. And I would like to say, because I have been the one that has been very concerned about the process to get the minority parent. We've never experienced this process before. I'm happy that Yvette Gentry has been chosen to be that person, but we need to be clear. This is a new day for us in moving forward in the superintendent selection process. Again, I have voiced my concerns about the screening committee. That's nothing that this board can do anything about because it comes from Frankfurt, but I will continue to say there is a concern that the screening committee does not reflect the population of the students in the Jefferson County Public Schools. So I would ask, if we have to vote, if we have to come to consensus, can we have something on the website so when people go to it, there's a summary of where we are right now, as opposed to, I'm not saying get rid of frequently asked questions, I'm saying have something that's visible as soon as I go to that site that summarizes what we have done up to this point. Is that possible?
That will be up to the folks who programmed the website. I'll ask Allison Martin, who manages that page.
I think this is on. I will be happy to provide and put up on the website any information that the board provides to me. Generally, Mr. Mellon, who has been kind of the conduit from the board to the communications department, has been sending me the information that should be posted on the website. So I see no problem if Mr. Brady's remarks that he made tonight are forwarded on to Mr. Mellon, that we can put those on the landing page of the website if that's what the board desires.
Is that okay? Member Porter? Does that work for you?
I think so.
Okay. Member Horn.
The process is also hasn't been very clear to me, so I just wanted to make sure that I just publicly express that. I share Ms. Porter's concerns about the transparency, and I really hope that this process will be handled in a fair way. The board can't make decisions outside of our board meetings, so everything that we're talking about related to this process, I think it's important for the public to know that you're hearing what we're talking about the process. So if things are happening that aren't being decided, they're not being decided by the board. So I do have a concern about the timeline, and I wanted to vocalize that the board has not decided on that timeline. And I know that there is a December 1st application deadline, but beyond that, I think that Chair Brady has decided on the timeline. So I just wanted to be clear that we don't have that as a fixed timeline, because I don't think we've ever discussed it publicly.
Just to be clear, I'm not arbitrarily deciding this timeline. This is just, I think, a guideline, if anything else, is to when those items should occur. It's not a hard and fast timeline. It's just something to be able to provide an idea of when those items might happen.
Well, I think that probably it might be prudent to have a discussion. It doesn't have to be tonight, because we could prepare for it, but to have a discussion on some of the procedural aspects of this. And I think if there has been an RFP accepted, which I don't know who decided that the statement from the committee, from the person who had applied for the RFP, I don't know who decided that it was acceptable, because I don't think the public has heard anything about it. So I'm not sure who decided it, but if it was decided, and again, it's not a big point with me, I'm going to move on, but I guess when this company comes in, maybe at the next meeting we can have a discussion about this timeline.
Further comments? Member Porter.
One of the things that I've been asked several times is about the search firm that's doing this. There is no search firm, and I think that needs to be stated on the with the information, because we requested a proposal. We put out an RFP. We got it back. There were some things that we did not get from either of the three, but people are under the assumption that we're paying a search firm. And I think we really need to clarify that, because I've been asked more than one time about that. So that's something that needs to be posted on the website as well, because people feel like that we are spending money, and why are we spending money? But the bottom line is there is no search firm. So I think that would be helpful if we posted that out. And it might be under the frequently asked questions, Mr. Mellon, I'm sorry. I haven't read under every frequently asked question. That's why I'm asking to put it on the front, so when people go to it, because people are under the assumption that we are working with a search firm, and we are not.
Yeah. So, as Mr. Mellon has already stated, that item is on there, but I think we might be able to find a way to be able to put that more prominently on the website. Member Vice Chair Warner.
So I just want to clarify that we did, in fact, the board accepted a proposal in response to an RFP at our last meeting from a community relations firm. So that was a board decision, and that happened as part of a public discussion, and we voted, and it was unanimous, 6-0 at the last meeting, to accept that community relations firm, pending additional information, which we received from the project manager about their plan to make sure that they were addressing historically marginalized groups and to reach out to the community broadly. And so perhaps that plan that was sent to board members also needs to be on the website for how they will be accessing all kinds of groups from all across the community. But that the decision, the acceptance of the community relations firm did happen at the last meeting.
But it was subject to something, approval of a separate agreement, which the board has never approved. So just because, I mean, Chair Brady just said it was approved by the board. So we didn't approve it as a board. I mean, one board member can't act for me. So I'm not asking that it be voted on. It's just a point of order to again point out that we are a board and we act through our body as a body. The 7 of us vote, and it's concerning. So I just, I'm hopeful that this process can be ironed out once this company is on board, and we can talk about the timeline and do this in a professional manner without, since we do not have a search firm.
Any further questions? All right. Hearing that there are no further questions, is there a motion to receive the update on the superintendent search? Motion made by Member Duncan. Is there a second? Second made by Member Geese. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Now we're on to consent calendar items. On the consent calendar, are there any items that board members wish to pull down? Member Duncan.
Just like to pull down K.
Any other items? Okay. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item K? Motion made by Member Geese, seconded by Vice Chair Wilner. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Now we will look at item K individually from the consent calendar, which is the acceptance of the comprehensive annual financial report for the year ended June 30th, 2017. Member Duncan, I'll let you ask your concern, or if you have a question about that.
Well, just a question around the recommendation that was made for our activity funds, and what the recommendation was from our auditing firm on that. We had internal audit make recommendations about centralizing bookkeeping, and we have a bookkeeper who trains other bookkeepers, but I wasn't clear about what the Strothman audit was recommending about our activity funds. Maybe Dr. Polio knows that answer.
Come on up, guys.
I didn't want you all to feel left out.
I'll leave it to the experts.
Our recommendation in our management letter dealt with school activity funds and the various findings that we encountered when we went to each individual school. And we've enumerated those and have listed those out for further processing. Our recommendation is that the board take steps to properly train, to properly educate, and to properly monitor the bookkeepers to see that they're doing their jobs, that these errors that we're encountering, which they're numerous, that these errors can be minimized, fixed, done away with. Eddie and Cordelia have published, I think most of you have seen it, a fairly comprehensive plan for how they're going to address these issues in the future, starting with hiring of a person to be a resource to the bookkeepers, to be able to answer their questions, to be able to give them guidance on particular issues. They've also, I think, working on some computerized training, individual training on specific aspects of the Red Book, which is the accounting guide for school bookkeepers. The internal audit is going to step up their monitoring of the school activity funds, particularly those that have numerous findings, and by way of follow-up, by way of re-audit, to see if those findings continue to occur, what needs to be done.
Was there ever any consideration, somehow I'm just thinking, was there consideration to centralize activity funds and manage them centrally instead of at the schools?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
We've looked into that and tried to make sure that we covered all bases. And one of our concerns is that if we had a central core of bookkeeping staff that were not based at the school level, it's a tough model to work through, because in our schools we have so many different points of revenue collection. Someone might be collecting field trip fees in one classroom, fundraiser fees in another activity or after school, and all of these make centralization a very difficult proposition unless we significantly increase staff, which means we're diverting resources out of classrooms, and that's not our goal.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, because I just was not clear about whether that was a consideration in there at all. But the training part and the oversight part is what we want to step up.
One of the things that we will be doing, I meet regularly with Jim Tenza, with Dean Dorton, who is oversees our internal audit staff. We have 3 internal auditors, but we will be meeting at least monthly to review any of the findings that they are identifying out at the school level, as well as working with the list that Strothman has identified through this internal audit.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Any further questions? All right, thank you very much. So is there a motion to approve the consent item K? Motion made by Member Geese. Is there a second? Second made by Member Duncan. All those in favor? Ms. Horn? The motion passes unanimously. And that concludes our consent calendar. At this time, our next item will be tie bids for bid ID 7484, electrical supplies and lighting, which are 3 draws. Vice Chair Wilner? Your mic's off.
Item 54 on bid ID 7484 for electrical supplies and lighting goes to Ed KUTE Electric Supplies, Inc. Tie bid number 2. Item numbers 188 and 220 on bid ID 7484 for electrical supplies and lighting. And the winning bid is, this is so exciting. All right. AM Electric. And tie bid number 3, item numbers 37, 38, 103, 220, and 237 on bid ID 7484 for electrical supplies and lighting. And the item is awarded to... Angie knows I love this. I live for this. All right. Wesco Distribution.
Okay. And that concludes that part of our agenda. Now it's on to our board planning calendar. Is there discussion regarding the board planning calendar? Hearing that there is, the board will not recognize a member from District 2.
Excuse me, that is completely inappropriate. I'm making a motion that we have a special meeting Friday to discuss the incidents at J-Town and also the superintendent's evaluation. You can't do that.
Actually, according to board policy, I can.
No, you can't.
So
Because I wasn't out of order, so you can't.
You were out of order earlier.
No, I
and
wasn't.
You have an inability to be able to stay in order tonight. So
That is a joke, Chair Brady. That is an absolute joke.
So
Your leadership is just getting worse
board
tonight
reports?
and worse.
Is there a motion to receive, or, well, we don't need to make a motion, so that includes board reports. I'm sorry, Mr. Geese? Oh, thank you. We don't have need a motion, so we're going to move on. There is no need for an executive session, and therefore we will move on to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Reports.
I'm sorry, I thought I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. Is there, okay, going on to board reports? I knew I was missing something. Who had a board report? Member Duncan.
Well, I just wanted to add my thanks to Class Act. I was able to attend DOS's rededication of their facility at Class Act. And, you know, Class Act has helped Southern and DOS and Shelby Elementary with their finance programs. And they are amazing partners, helped sponsor a beautiful renovation of the Class Act facility within DOS High School, very accessible from the parking lot to the public. And so I just appreciate so much their support for all of our schools, and very much enjoyed the program there the other day. And also, I just wanted to mention on November 29th, which we got a little time to think about this, I have a meeting at the Department of Education with the local school board member advisory council, and if anyone has any questions that you think we need to offer to bring up at that meeting, please think about that and let me know what questions that I can share there that the whole group can listen to and Dr. Pruitt can weigh in on. Thank you.
Thank you. Further board reports. Member Horn.
I just wanted to point out.
Microphone, Member Horn.
I just wanted to point out in my board report that you can click on the minutes and then there's a link, and there's some really good stuff in this week's board report because there's some diagrams
that show the continuous improvement planning and funding processes. So I just wanted to point that out, that if you go to the minutes and click on it, it's just really good stuff. We're going to delve into it a little bit more at the meeting on Thursday, looking at trying to develop common language between data management and financial planning. And so it'll be really exciting work for about a half hour, and then we'll go over the comprehensive financial document also. But I'm really excited about the planning work that and this collaboration between Dina's department and Cordelia's department. So just wanted to make sure you all check out the links.
Further board reports? Vice Chair Wilner.
I'll just mention one thing that I did since the last board meeting that was really interesting. I was invited to attend on October 25th with the Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods with Metro Louisville. They had folks in from out of town over a 3-day period, an organization called Cure Violence. It's a really wonderful model looking at community violence from a public health perspective. And if people are interested in reading about this, it's cureviolence.org. The idea is to treat community violence like an epidemic, and it's a proactive approach. And so the city is partnering with hospitals and other health organizations, and also looking for possible inroads with the schools. So it was a very exciting and interesting conversation. And just again, this public health lens on community violence was just a different model. The model has been extremely successful in some other communities across the country. So I just want to put it on people's radar that to be aware of this model, and it's something coming to a community near us very soon. And I think there will clearly be opportunities for the schools to be involved with that work.
Member Porter.
On the sound. First of all, I'd like to thank the board and the audience for the recognition that I received this evening. I want to say that I'm not an awards person, but I received this award on behalf of our students for the Jefferson County Public Schools with extreme gratitude to my family of strong individuals who have supported me, and to my faith that sustains me on this life journey. So I want to thank everyone because it's important to thank people along the way. And I didn't get here by myself, but my primary focus has and always will be for the students of the Jefferson County Public Schools. So I just want to take a minute to do a thank you, and I was overwhelmed by your applause. I want to mention briefly, because I said at the last meeting that I would say a little bit about the Council of Great City Schools, which is where I received this award in Cleveland, Ohio. And at that conference were members of the Title I staff, so I want to give them a shout out for being there and learning with me. And also Tammy Berlin, who I saw earlier from JCTA, was a part of the group from JCPS that attended the conference. There were inspiring speakers. Bill Gates was a speaker that talked about their continued support for public education. Van Jones, who is currently a CNN commentator, was there. So that's just a brief highlights. I did have an opportunity to facilitate one of the sessions while I was at the conference, and that was very energizing. Also, yesterday, Dr. Polio and I had a great time in District 1, and he has already mentioned in his remarks, but I have to give a shout out to the schools again. We were at King Elementary, Brandeis, and Cochran. I want to thank the principals and the school teams for their hard work and for all the great things that we saw yesterday. So Principal Stephanie White at King, Dr. Shavita West at Brandeis, and Principal Tim Foster at Cochran. The visits were amazing, the kids were amazing, and it was a great time. Also, I've had the opportunity since our last meeting to attend a Flash Dads at Englehart Elementary, the Student Assignment Review Committee, the NAACP dinner. Principal Gunn was at a community conversation last night at Lyles Mall. And October the 28th, Metro United Way celebrated 100 years of service to this community. With the work of Metro United Way, this district is stronger. So I want to acknowledge that they have been in the business for 100 years and they are still strong and going forward. Also would like to say the Facilities Committee met on November the 2nd at CB Young. We are having open discussion. Dr. Polio is talking to us about what the district needs to look like as we go into the 18-19 school year. So it is our hope that he will bring to you a recommendation as we roll into January. Our next meeting will be Monday, February the 27th at CB Young from 4:30 to 5:30. It's an opportunity for an open conversation and open questions, so I did want to announce that, and I want to thank Dr. Cole for serving as the vice chair of that committee. Also, I wanted to give a shout out to Diversity, Equity, and Poverty because they received the Sam Robinson Service Award. Some of us remember Dr. Robinson and all the work, the hard work that he did and his devotion to education. And when I saw it posted, I saw Delquan Dorsey's name and Selena Fishback's name mentioned on the post. But a shout out to Diversity, Equity, and Poverty for receiving the Sam Robinson Service Award. And I just briefly want to say that this week has been a stressful week for all of us as board members, and I, as a board member, am not in the business of trashing anyone, and if I have a problem with something or someone, I take it directly to the superintendent, and there's a lot of media coverage, and I'm not knocking the media. Everybody's got a job to do. But we have hardworking people in this district, and we have 100,000 students. And every day is not a great day, but it's our responsibility to make it a great day for our students. So when people are sending me things, negative comments, what we're not doing, we are working very hard. This board member supports the Jefferson County Public Schools and everybody that works here. If we're not doing it right, we're gonna make it better. But if we don't support the people that are here every day in the schools with the students, we will not be the best district. I pledge my support to this district. I've done it for 7 years. I've not changed my mind. We've got a lot of work to do, but working together we can get it done. Tearing us apart, we will never get to where we need to be. So I'm saying that because as we read things and as we look at things, understand that our goal is to make this a better world for our children. And when that's not our goal, step aside. But my pledge is to the Jefferson County Public Schools and the employees that are here. I thank each and every department. If I could call them all out, I would, but you would get the hook and pull me out of my chair. But thank you for everybody. I just want to say that because we do not say thank you enough. That concludes my report.
All right. Thank you. As I said earlier, there's no need for an executive session or action item. Therefore, is there
My
a
board
motion to
report is that I
adjourn?
need to go on record and say
Motion
that
made to adjourn is
we
made
need to
by
have a
Member
special
Keys. Is
meeting
there
to
a second?
discuss the J-Town situation.
Is there a second
I'm
to
suggesting we have a
adjourn?
special meeting within 1 week
I'm sorry, you have a report. Member Keys
to
has a
suggest
report. I'm so
to
sorry.
address the J-Town situation within 1 week. I
Member
think we
Keys,
should
you
have
need
a
to actually do
I
your
think we
report.
should have a special meeting.
Okay, thank you. I would just like to applaud Member Porter's words. There are words that are needed perhaps more than ever before in our district. Our district has seen some tough times. Our district has gone through some tough times. Tonight has been quite a tough time indeed. Indeed, this entire week has been a tough time. So again, thank you to our hardworking staff. We are indebted to you. But as a corollary to that, I've also prepared some words that I would like to share as a thank you to other members in the audience that I see, and also to my constituency in District 4 in Southwest Jefferson County. 1 year ago, as of tomorrow, will be the 1-year anniversary of Election Day 2016. As I look out into the audience, I see several people who supported me in my journey, which was not at all foretold that I would sit in the seat. As a matter of fact, it's the most unlikeliest of stories that a then 24-year-old who signed up, being at age 24 to sign up, a current teacher in only his 2nd year of teaching, and a fairly recent graduate of the system would sit in this seat. I want to say thank you to those in my constituency and those in this room who believed in me over a year ago, when essentially I was freshly graduated from the University of Louisville's graduate program. I didn't have my name aside from that. So I thank you very much. And on that note, I have some other words as well. When I stood before the board on January the 10th, 2017, I took an oath to defend the laws of this republic and of this commonwealth. While others proclaim to be judge, jury, and executioner, I proclaim to be a defender of law and the process that binds us together. Should our proper investigation find wrongdoing, I will defend the law and pledge to punish the guilty. Should our investigation find innocence, I will defend the law and I will protect the innocent. But I will never assume myself to be all-knowing and arrogant, nor abandon the rights and sensible process that the law affords us all citizens of the United States and of this Commonwealth. To do so would render one unfit for office and unknowing of the chaos that lawlessness brings. As a closing, I would like to extend an olive branch of compromise to all of my colleagues on this board, all 7, as I've been keen to doing for a year. We have issues to solve. Yelling and being out of order will not solve the issue. It will not solve the issue. It will not solve the issue. It is my hope we can work together to solve the issues that plague this district. Thank you.
Avoiding the issue won't solve it either, Ben.
Moving forward, is there a motion to adjourn for the evening? Motion made by Member Horn, seconded by Member Duncan. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you and have a good evening.